It's a funny thing, memory. At 75, you'd think it would be a soft, blurry thing, like an old photograph left out in the sun. But it's not. Some memories are as sharp and cruel as a shard of glass. I can recall the exact floral pattern on the chintz armchair in our first apartment 53 years ago, the scent of Robert's aftershave, the weight of our son Daniel's tiny body in my arms. And I can recall, with a clarity that still steals my breath, the precise shade of grey the asphalt was on that Tuesday afternoon, the moment before my world split clean in two. It was just an ordinary day. That's the most vicious part of it. The sky was a placid, unassuming blue. The biggest event on our calendar was Daniel's weekly family dinner, a tradition he upheld with the same dutiful precision he applied to his flourishing investment firm. Robert was driving, his hands resting on the wheel of our comfortable sedan, the same way they had for decades, steady, reliable. We were talking about our granddaughter, Lily, and her upcoming piano recital. It was all so terribly, beautifully normal. We were almost home when it hit me. "My purse," I said, my hand flying to the empty space on the seat beside me. "Robert, I left my good purse at the restaurant." Robert sighed, a familiar put-upon sound that was more habit than irritation. "Margaret, for heaven's sake, it's just a purse. I'll call them. They'll hold it for you." "No," I said, a sudden, inexplicable urgency gripping me. "It has my mother's locket in it, and Daniel's work bag is in the trunk. He'll need it. He said he had a big presentation tomorrow." It was Daniel's bag that did it. Anything for our son, our golden boy. The thought of inconveniencing him was enough for Robert to signal and pull a smooth U-turn. As we drove back, I felt a prickle of unease, a tiny, discordant note in the symphony of our peaceful life. It was nothing I could name, just a feeling. A cold draft in a warm room. At the restaurant, Robert went in to fetch my purse. I got out to retrieve Daniel's laptop bag from the trunk, a sleek leather messenger bag that probably cost more than my first car. It was heavy. As I lifted it, the main clasp, which must have been loose, gave way. The bag flopped open, and a few items spilled onto the floor of the trunk. A silver pen, a file folder, and a slim second cell phone I had never seen before. Curiosity is a powerful and dangerous thing in a woman my age. I've lived long enough to know that some doors are best left unopened. But this phone, it wasn't his usual one. It was black and anonymous. Acting on an impulse I still don't understand, I picked it up and slipped it into the pocket of my coat, just as Robert returned with my purse. "Got it," he said, smiling. "See? No harm done." I smiled back, the unfamiliar weight in my pocket feeling like a block of ice against my hip. All the way home, a single thought repeated itself in my mind, a frantic, looping question. Why does my son need a secret phone? That night, after Robert was asleep, his gentle snores filling the quiet house, I took the phone into the guest bathroom, the only room without a window facing our neighbours. My hands trembled as I pressed the power button. It wasn't password protected. The screen lit up, and what I saw was not a single crack in the foundation of my life, but a chasm that opened up right under my feet, threatening to swallow me whole. It wasn't just messages from a woman who was clearly not his wife, Sarah. The messages were filled with cruel, dismissive names for her, for his own daughter Lily, and even for us, his parents. He called me the old relic, and his father the walking wallet. But that was only the beginning. There were photos, not just of him and this other woman, a sharp-faced blonde named Zoe, but photos of documents, bank statements, property deeds, spreadsheets. My heart hammered against my ribs. I saw our names, Margaret and Robert Peterson, on account statements I didn't recognize, with balances being systematically drained. I saw the deed to our family cabin at Lake Arrowhead, the one my father built with his own 2 hands, being prepared for a transfer into a corporate name. ZRD Enterprises. Zoe. Robert. Daniel. No, that couldn't be right. Not Robert. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the phone. I kept scrolling, propelled by a horrified momentum. Then I found it. A video file. My finger hovered over it, a part of me screaming not to look, to throw the phone away and pretend this never happened. But I couldn't. I had to know. I pressed play. It was Daniel and Zoe sitting in a sleek, modern office. They were laughing, champagne flutes in their hands. "To the final phase," Zoe said, her voice like honey laced with arsenic. "Once the Lake Arrowhead property is liquidated and the final investment portfolio is transferred, we're free. 6 months tops." "And my parents?" Daniel asked, a smirk playing on his lips that I had never seen before. It was predatory. "What about them?" Zoe replied, shrugging. "Your father already signed off on the power of attorney. He's so desperate for your approval he'd sign his own death warrant if you told him it was a good investment. He thinks he's securing his legacy. He has no idea he's just funding ours." Daniel laughed, a deep, ugly sound that bore no resemblance to the joyful noise of the little boy I raised. "And my mother?" Zoe leaned in and kissed him. "She'll be devastated, of course. But by the time the old relic figures it out, we'll be on a beach in the Caymans. What's she going to do? Knit a strongly worded letter?" The phone slipped from my numb fingers and clattered onto the tile floor. I braced myself against the sink, staring at my reflection in the mirror. The face that looked back at me was a stranger's, a terrified old woman with wide, hollow eyes. The sound roaring in my ears wasn't the blood pressure I sometimes worried about. It was the sound of my entire life, every memory, every sacrifice, every moment of love and pride burning to the ground. And the worst part, the part that felt like a physical blow, was the mention of my husband. He already signed off on the power of attorney. Robert. My steady, reliable Robert. He knew. He had to have known. I walked back into our bedroom in a daze. He was still sleeping, his chest rising and falling in that familiar rhythm. For 53 years, that sound had been my comfort, the bedrock of my world. Now it was the sound of betrayal. I stood there watching him, and I knew with chilling certainty that I was utterly and completely alone. The loving wife and proud mother I had been just hours before was gone, and in her place was a woman with nothing left to lose, and that kind of woman is the most dangerous thing in the world. The next morning felt like a performance. I moved through the motions of making coffee, laying out Robert's pills, and spreading marmalade on his toast, all while a silent scream echoed in the cavern of my chest. Every glance from him, every casual touch, felt like a lie. He'd ask if I slept well, and I'd say, "Like a log," my voice sounding unnaturally calm. I was an actress in the tragedy of my own life, he knew. The words from the video replayed in my mind. He'd sign his own death warrant if you told him it was a good investment. Was he a willing participant, or just a fool? At that moment, it hardly mattered. The result was the same. The man I had shared a bed with for over 5 decades was a conspirator in the demolition of our lives. My first instinct was to confront him, to scream and rage and throw the phone at his head. But the woman in the mirror last night, the one with the hollow eyes, knew that would be a mistake. Daniel and that woman Zoe thought I was a helpless old relic. They were counting on me to crumble, to cry, to be consumed by grief until it was too late. They underestimated me. They had forgotten that before I was a wife and a mother, I was Margaret Connolly, a bookkeeper who could make numbers sing and sniff out a padded expense report from a mile away. I needed proof, hard, Undeniable proof that I could take to someone who would listen. More importantly, I needed to understand the full scope of the damage. For that, I needed an ally. And there was only one other person as deeply betrayed as I was. My daughter-in-law, Sarah. Calling her was one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. My hand trembled as I dialed her number. "Margaret, hi." Her voice was bright and cheerful. She was on her way to drop Lily at school. "Is everything okay?" "Sarah, dear," I began, my own voice a strained whisper. "I need to see you. Alone. It's urgent. And you mustn't tell Daniel we're meeting." There was a pause. The cheerful energy vanished, replaced by a cautious concern. "Is everything all right? Are you sick?" "No, I'm not sick. Please, Sarah. Can you come to the house after you drop off Lily? Robert has his golf game this morning." "Of course," she said slowly. "I'll be there in an hour." The hour I waited was the longest of my life. I paced the length of our living room, the gallery of family photos on the mantelpiece mocking me. There was Daniel's graduation photo, his smile so full of promise. Our wedding picture. Robert and I so young and full of foolish certainty. A photo of Sarah and Daniel on their wedding day. A perfect couple. It was all a curated lie. When the doorbell rang, my heart leapt into my throat. Sarah stood on the porch, her brow furrowed with worry. She was a good woman, a kind mother, and a loving wife. She didn't deserve this. "Margaret, you're scaring me. What's going on?" she asked, as I led her into the kitchen. I didn't waste time with pleasantries. I couldn't. I made her sit down, poured her a cup of tea she didn't touch, and I placed the secret phone on the table between us. "This is Daniel's," I said softly. She looked at it, confused. "I've never seen that phone before." "I know," I said. "I found it last night." I told her everything. I watched her face as the story unfolded, saw the confusion morph into disbelief, then denial, and finally into a raw, gut-wrenching horror that mirrored my own. When I described the contents of the phone, the messages, the financial documents, the woman named Zoe, she shook her head, her hand flying to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "No, there must be a mistake. Daniel, he wouldn't. He loves us. He loves Lily." Tears streamed down her face, and my own stony resolve threatened to crack. I wanted to comfort her, to hold her, but I had to be strong, for both of us. "Sarah, I saw it with my own eyes," I said, my voice firm. "And there's more." With trembling fingers, I found the video and played it for her. I watched her crumble as she heard her husband's laugh, his casual cruelty. When Zoe made the remark about the old relic, a spark of anger ignited in Sarah's tear-filled eyes. When they dismissed their plans for Lily, that spark became a flame. The weeping, broken woman was gone. In her place was a mother whose child had been threatened. She looked up at me, her face pale, but her expression hardened. That monster. "What are we going to do?" "We are going to fight," I said, reaching across the table and taking her hand. Her skin was cold, but her grip was strong. "They think we're a heartbroken wife and a helpless old woman. They have no idea who they're dealing with." That afternoon, a partnership was forged in the quiet of my sunlit kitchen, fueled by grief and rage. Sarah, it turned out, was a paralegal before she had Lily. She understood legal documents and financial structures in a way I hadn't in decades. I still had my bookkeeper's mind, a meticulous attention to detail, and a deep understanding of my husband's habits and our family's history. We started with the flash drive I'd found in the bag, the one I'd copied onto my old desktop computer before putting the phone back. It was a treasure trove of villainy. Sarah's fingers flew across the keyboard, her face grim. We uncovered the shell corporation, ZRD Enterprises. We found the forged signatures. Daniel had been practicing his father's and my signature for months. He had used a digital template to replicate it on countless documents. The power of attorney Robert had signed was the key. He had given Daniel sweeping control over their joint assets, our retirement funds, everything. Why? Because Daniel had presented it as a brilliant estate planning move, a way to protect their wealth from taxes and secure Lily's future. Robert, blinded by pride in his son's financial acumen, had signed without question. He was a fool, but his foolishness was a weapon in Daniel's hands. The plan was audacious. They were siphoning our money into ZRD, then using ZRD to make investments that were actually purchases for their new life. A condo in the Cayman Islands, already in escrow. A luxury car, registered to Zoe. They were bleeding us dry, piece by piece, all while playing the part of the devoted son and loving family man. He hosts the annual Children's Hospital Charity Gala next month, Sarah said suddenly, looking up from the laptop. It's his biggest night of the year. The whole city will be there. He gives a big speech about family, legacy, and community. An idea began to form in my mind, cold and sharp and perfect. Revenge is a dish best served cold, they say. But I've always found it's even better when served in public, under the bright, unforgiving lights of a grand ballroom, in front of everyone whose respect you've spent a lifetime trying to earn. He's going to give his speech, I said, a slow, grim smile spreading across my face. He's going to talk all about his precious legacy, and we're going to be there to help him illustrate it. For the first time since that horrible night, I felt a flicker of something other than pain. It was a cold, hard ember of determination. Daniel and Zoe thought they were building their future on my ruins. They were about to learn what happens when you try to bury a woman who knows how to plant seeds in a graveyard. They were about to learn that there is no fury like a mother's love, curdled into a righteous rage. The weeks leading up to the gala were the most surreal of my life. I lived a double existence. By day, I was Margaret Peterson, doting wife and mother. I'd listen to Robert talk about his golf scores, and I'd ask Daniel about his preparations for the big charity event, my voice dripping with the maternal pride they expected. I'd compliment the colour of his tie, ask if he was eating properly, and play the part of the oblivious, gentle matriarch they had long since dismissed. But every moment I was alone, or with Sarah, I was a general planning a war. My quiet suburban home became our command centre. Sarah brought over a burner phone and a laptop that couldn't be traced. We worked with a ferocity born of desperation. Our first move was to protect what we could. Sarah found a lawyer she trusted implicitly, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Miss DeLuca. We met her in a discreet office downtown. I laid out the evidence we'd gathered, copies of the forged documents, screenshots from the secret phone, the timeline of fraudulent transfers. Miss DeLuca's expression went from professional interest to cold fury. "This is grand larceny, forgery, and elder abuse, Mrs. Peterson," she said, her voice clipped. "They could go to prison for a very long time." Under her guidance, we began the silent, intricate work of building a fortress around what was left of our assets. I had a small inheritance from my aunt, held in an account Daniel didn't know about. It became our war chest. Miss DeLuca used it to file injunctions and freeze accounts, all timed to hit the morning after the gala. We couldn't move too soon, or we'd tip them off. The element of surprise was our only real weapon. The hardest part was the performance. I had to sit across the dinner table from Robert, my husband of 53 years, and act as if my heart wasn't a gaping wound. One evening, he reached across the table and patted my hand. "You've been quiet lately, Margie," he said, his brow furrowed with what looked like concern. "Everything all right?" I nearly choked on my food. I wanted to scream, to ask him how he could sit there and pretend. How could he look at the life we built together and help our son burn it to the ground? Instead, I forced a smile. "Just tired, dear," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Getting old is a full-time job." He chuckled, satisfied. "Aren't we all?" He was so wrapped up in the fiction of our perfect life, so blinded by his own pride, that he couldn't see the woman sitting opposite him was a stranger sharpening a knife. Sarah was having an even harder time. She had to live with Daniel, sleep in the same bed with the man who called her a millstone and planned to abandon her and their child. She channeled her pain into action. She became a master of espionage in her own home. She placed a small audio recorder in his home office and managed to capture a damning phone call between Daniel and Zoe, where they gloated about the final transfer of the Lake Arrowhead property, scheduled for the day of the gala. "It's the perfect cover," Daniel's voice said, tinny and cruel through the small speaker. "Everyone will be watching me save the sick kids, a pillar of the community. No one will be watching the wire transfer to our offshore account." That recording was our crown jewel. It was irrefutable proof of intent. As the day of the gala approached, our plan crystallized. It would be a two-pronged attack. Miss DeLuca would handle the legal assault, filing everything the moment the courts opened the next morning. Our job was the public execution. Sarah secured a copy of the gala's program. As a major sponsor, Daniel had arranged for a 10-minute video presentation to play just before his keynote speech. It was meant to be a heartwarming montage of his family and his company's charitable work. Sarah, citing her background as a paralegal and offering to help, managed to get the technician's contact information from the event planner. She told him she had a special surprise tribute from the family that she wanted to add to the video. Using the password Daniel had foolishly written on a sticky note in his desk, she accessed the file, downloaded the original, and we went to work. We spent 2 days in my dimly lit study with a tech-savvy nephew of Miss DeLuca's, a young man who could make a laptop do things I thought were magic. We edited the video. We kept the beginning, the smiling photos of Robert and me, of Sarah and a young Lily. But then, it would change. We intercut the images with scans of the forged documents, the bank statements showing the drained accounts. We overlaid the audio from Daniel's recorded phone call, his voice a venomous counterpoint to the images of his loving family. And for the grand finale, we had the video from the secret phone, Daniel and Zoe toasting to their deception, calling me a relic and laughing about their escape. The night before the gala, Sarah and I sat in my kitchen, the finished video file on a USB stick on the table between us. We were exhausted, emotionally raw, but united. "Are we really doing this?" she whispered, her eyes wide. "We're about to destroy our family." I reached for her hand. "They destroyed it, Sarah," I said, my voice low and steady. "We are just turning on the lights so everyone can see the rubble." The night of the gala arrived, cloaked in a deceptive glamour. The ballroom of the Fairmont Hotel was a sea of glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm golden light over the assembled titans of industry, local politicians, and society figures. To them, this was a night of virtue and celebration. To me, it was an execution chamber. I wore a navy blue lace dress, elegant and understated. On my shoulder, I wore my mother's diamond brooch, its sharp point feeling like a tiny, secret weapon. Robert, oblivious, fussed with his tuxedo, beaming with pride. "Our son, Margaret," he kept saying, "look at what he's accomplished." I would just smile, a tight, brittle thing that didn't reach my eyes. Daniel was in his element, gliding through the crowd, shaking hands, his smile a dazzling veneer of charisma. He looked every bit the philanthropist, the devoted family man. He stopped at our table to kiss my cheek, his cologne washing over me. "You look beautiful, Mum," he said. "Are you proud?" I looked directly into his eyes, the eyes of a stranger. "You have no idea," I said, my voice quiet. He took it as the affirmation he wanted and moved on, leaving me with the bitter taste of his hypocrisy. Sarah arrived, a vision in emerald green, with Lily at her side for the pre-dinner reception. Lily was beautiful in a velvet dress, her eyes shining with excitement. Seeing her innocent face was like a stab to the heart, but it solidified my resolve. This was for her, to protect her from the poison that ran through her father's veins. After Lily was collected by a babysitter, Sarah joined us at the main table, her face a pale, composed mask. We exchanged a single, brief look. It was all we needed. It's time. The dinner dragged on. Speeches were made. Awards were given. I felt strangely detached, as if watching a film of my own life. Then, the moment came. The host, a local news anchor, stepped up to the podium. "And now," she announced brightly, "before we hear from our generous host and chairman of this year's gala, Mr. Daniel Peterson, we have a special presentation he put together, highlighting the importance of family and community." The lights dimmed. The massive screens on either side of the stage flickered to life. My heart began to pound a frantic, heavy rhythm against my ribs. Robert patted my hand. "Here we go," he whispered excitedly. The video began, just as we had planned. Sweet, sentimental photos of Daniel as a child. Pictures of our family vacations, holidays, birthdays. The swelling orchestral music was designed to tug at the heartstrings. I could see Daniel at the side of the stage, a proud, self-satisfied smile on his face as he watched. Then, the music stuttered and warped into a low, ominous hum. A picture of our family home faded in, but then a document was superimposed over it, the forged deed of transfer to ZRD Enterprises. A collective murmur went through the crowd. I saw Daniel's smile falter. He glanced at the tech booth, confused. The next image was a smiling photo of Robert and me on our 50th anniversary. It dissolved into a bank statement, our life savings, with a series of massive withdrawals highlighted in red. Now the whispers in the ballroom grew louder, more urgent. Robert stiffened beside me, his hand dropping from mine. He was staring at the screen, his face ashen. Then came the audio. Daniel's voice, crisp and clear through the ballroom's state-of-the-art sound system. "It's the perfect cover. Everyone will be watching me save the sick kids." The screen showed a photo of Sarah and Lily smiling in a park. His recorded voice continued, cold and cruel. "No one will be watching the wire transfer to our offshore account." Sarah, sitting across from me, took a slow, deliberate sip of water, her eyes fixed on the stage. The chaos was erupting. People were standing up, pointing at the screens, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid fascination. Daniel was frozen, his face a mask of horror. He looked from the screens to our table, his eyes locking with mine. In that moment, he knew. He saw the quiet, steely resolve in my gaze, and he understood that the helpless old relic had just detonated a bomb in the middle of his perfect life. But we had saved the best for last. The final scene appeared on the screen, the video from the secret phone. There was Daniel, toasting with Zoe. The entire ballroom heard her say, "Your father already signed off. He has no idea he's just funding ours." They heard Daniel ask about me, and they heard Zoe's reply, echoing in the stunned silence. What's she going to do? Knit a strongly worded letter? At that moment, I stood up. The spotlight, intended for my son, found me instead. I walked calmly to the podium as the news anchor backed away, her mouth agape. The video ended, plunging the screens into darkness and leaving a ringing silence in the room. I tapped the microphone. The small sound echoed like a gunshot. "Good evening," I said, my voice clear and strong, betraying none of the tremor I felt inside. "My name is Margaret Peterson. For those of you who just saw me referred to as the old relic, I can assure you my knitting needles are at home." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the audience. I had them. "My son, Daniel, was supposed to give a speech tonight about legacy," I continued, my eyes finding his across the room. "He looked trapped, hunted. And he has. He has shown you all his true legacy, a legacy of deceit, of theft, and of a cruelty so profound it takes your breath away. He stole from his clients, he stole from his own family, and he was planning to steal a future from his own child." I turned my gaze to Robert, who looked like he had aged 20 years in the last 5 minutes. "And he did it with the help of his father, my husband, Robert Peterson, a man so consumed by pride that he couldn't see the viper he had raised." I let that hang in the air. The silence was absolute. "This gala was meant to raise money for sick children," I said, my voice ringing with an authority I didn't know I possessed. "My son has turned it into a monument to his own sickness. So, on behalf of the real victims of Daniel Peterson, I ask you to still give generously, but not to him." I looked over at Sarah, who now stood beside me, a pillar of strength. "My daughter-in-law Sarah and I will be working with the hospital directly to ensure every dollar you donate tonight goes where it was intended," I declared. "As for my son and my husband, I believe they have an appointment with a different kind of justice." As if on cue, 2 plainclothes detectives, arranged by Miss DeLuca, entered from a side door and began walking purposefully toward the stage. The flash of cameras started, a strobe-like effect capturing the complete and utter demolition of the Peterson family name. Daniel didn't run. He just stood there, his empire of lies collapsing around him, finally and truly exposed. I looked at him one last time, not with hatred, but with a profound and bottomless pity. He had everything, and he had thrown it all away for nothing. I turned and walked off the stage with Sarah, not looking back. We had set the fire, and now we would walk away and let it burn. I often think about that Tuesday afternoon, the U-turn in the car, the spilled bag. It was a moment of pure chance that unraveled everything. But perhaps it wasn't chance at all. Perhaps it was the universe giving me one last opportunity to open my eyes, to stop performing the role of the happy wife and see the truth that had been hiding in plain sight all along. My life was shattered, yes, but from the scattered pieces, Sarah and I have built something new, something smaller perhaps, but something infinitely stronger, something real. And for the first time in a very long time, I am not looking back. I am looking forward.